Roller Coaster Tycoon and Planet Coaster represent the absolute best in the theme park simulation genre. Last episode we introduced the question of how do Roller Coaster Tycoon's isometric pre-builds hold up in the 3D engine that is Planet Coaster. We put 4 coasters to the test last video, and this one we're going to do some new ones. Stay tuned to see which ones work and which ones don't. Hello everyone, welcome back to TH Designs, where we cover a whole host of different video topics on this channel, from recreations to incredible Wheel of Wonders monstrosities. Today we're actually doing a follow-up on the Roller Coaster Tycoon recreation video that you guys seem to really appreciate. It's by far the most viewed video. Thank you all for that. It was very fun to make, and I thought might as well make a follow-up. Maybe you guys will like it. I know I will certainly like making it. And there's also plenty of other pre-builds that I want to make. So really, why delay anymore? Let's jump over into Roller Coaster Tycoon and show you the 3 I have in mind. Here we are in Open RCT 2, just like last time. Of course, you can hear that awesome music with that awesome Magic Mountain build in the back. So let's jump over to Track Designer and let's see which ones we're going to be working on. So we did last episode, we did 4. I'm probably going to do 3 this episode to kind of tighten it up a little bit more. The last video ran a little long. It also leaves room for more episodes in the future. But last episode we did a wooden coaster, a steel looping coaster, the Schwarzkopf version, the Twister coaster, which failed miserably, and the Giga coaster as well, Velocirator. So in this episode, we're going to do 3 completely different ones, and I'm going to pick them here really quickly. So the first one is going to be the Corkscrew roller coaster, iconic coaster models for video games, for roller coaster simulators. This second one is actually a little bit of a different one. It's the Hyper Twister roller coaster model, and you actually may know what model I'm talking about if you're familiar with the game. That will be our second model we will be working with. And then third, we are going to do one we did last episode, and that's the Twister roller coaster. Last time we did Liberty Loop, which failed pretty miserably, but there were a lot of comments that felt it could have been done if it kind of was massaged a little bit more, and the barrel roll was going the wrong direction. That was my fault. It was very small, and I do think even with some massaging, it wouldn't have worked too great. So I wanted to take another stab at it because this is such a great coaster model. I wanted to do another colorful one, another one I liked as a kid, and that's Time Twister. And I figured let's start on this one just like we did in the last episode, but this time we're going to do it correctly. You can see all the spectacular colors here. This one, if I put the height marks on, is 65 feet, a little bit taller than the last one. Yeah, this one was only 48 feet, which even that I think was a little exaggerated. I think it was only 45 in game, so this should give us the freedom to build it correctly. It's a very fascinating little layout. Some comments wanted me to exaggerate it to make it fit in game because certainly the friction is different in Roller Coaster Tycoon than it is in Planet Coaster. Other people wanted me to stick to the height markers, so I'm just going to do what we did last episode. Because this coaster is not nearly as small as Liberty Loop, as you see go down the hill there, I think it'll work. So this will be the first one we take a stab at, and we're going to do it just like how we did last episode, just kind of going step by step, and I'll check in momentarily. So here we are in Planet Coaster with the same map as before. You can see the 4 from the first episode here, the Liberty Loop, which did not work so well. Maybe I'll take another stab at it another time. Glowworm, which was our Schwarzkopf, our steel looping coaster, whatever the official title is. You'll have to excuse my low graphics, by the way. My computer is a literal potato, so because we're so far away, the loop looks like polygonal. So if you ever see low graphics, that's why. Velocirator, which was our Giga coaster, this was maybe our most successful. This one got a lot of praise in the comments, and I think rightfully so. This was a really solid model. And then maybe the most fun one is probably Great White Whale, which you can see right here, our little Woody with our interlocking loops. So I figured why not do it on the same exact map. Maybe I'll organize it sometime in the future, but for now, let's take another stab at the Twister coaster. So as we know from last episode, the Twister model is the same exact as the B&M sit down over the shoulder, which of course is in game. Let's just get building. Nice thing is it starts on the ground, nice and easy, so this should be pretty easy. I'm going to build the lift and this little turnaround, and I'll check back right after that. That should be nice and quick. Alright, so here we are. I'm not going to do all the coloring just yet, because of course, as you can see and as we kind of already talked about, there is some pretty elaborate coloring here. I'll save that for the end. I did add some drive tires where over here you can see that there's nothing there, just to kind of keep the train moving. Also, this lift hill looks pretty shallow, but I tried to keep it pretty like proportionate to the station, because if I were to do like a typical angle, it's just too close to the station. As you can see in game, there's plenty of room for a brake run that's not even to where the top of the chain lift is. So we're about to drop all the way to the ground 0 feet and then do a loop, which is, it's a little hard to tell how tall that loop is, but we'll say maybe a 35 feet or so. So I'm going to build that really quick, and we'll do a little time lapse so you can see. Alright, there's our loop done. I made it 44 feet. I know we kind of were talking 30, 35 feet, but I think that that's pretty fair. It's really hard to profile these elements when they are so small, which we kind of saw a little bit over there. So I'm trying to maybe exaggerate these a little bit. Instead of making the heights exaggerated so that the coaster works, I think instead I'm just going to lower the friction. I think that that's fair. And if it's not, then we can kind of talk, but this should be fine. That drop looks like it should make that loop. The last time the loop was taller than the lift, and that obviously makes no sense physically. But we are set up pretty nicely to do the next element, and we're about halfway up that chain lift, which aligns pretty much perfectly to that. So now we're doing this cobra roll, which is about 40 feet. So a little cobra roll at the same height as the loop, and then we're going into this big 45-foot airtime hill, sweeping under that. I will probably get to around here-ish, and then we'll cut the little time lapse. There were also some comments telling me that I should use the pre-built inversions that are in the game. I get what you're saying, especially for the smaller elements, but if you've ever actually like seen these, oh, it's a demonic now, that's from our Wheel of Wonders. If you've ever actually like ridden on one of these loops, these pre-built loops, that transition is so snappy and horrible. They also don't get that small. The one I just made is smaller than the smallest possible one. So anyway, just putting that out there, I try not to do that, and I try and make everything custom. So anyway, I'm gonna get building. Alright, so there is our little cobra roll done, which I was really nervous about this moment here with the train on the chain lift. I thought this part of the corkscrew was going to be really close, and it's fine. It was close. As you probably saw in the time lapse, it was really close. After smoothing it out, it leveled out pretty nicely. Then we have a 46-foot airtime hill, which is close enough to 45 feet. Then we have this swooping motion underneath the chain lift, and now we're about to do this big helix through the loop, which is actually a really cool element. So we are actually above the brake run here, apparently. Again, I'm not going to be super picky. Next, we are doing this really cool swooping helix into this barrel roll, which I will make sure to get right this time. And after the barrel roll, I will probably then stop at this helix, and then we can talk about this finale. So let me build that really quickly, and we can talk about it. Alright, so there we go. There's our little helix, which looks pretty good. That clearance in the loop should be totally fine. This was a pretty easy element to make. So far, proportionally, we are looking pretty good. Technically, this is supposed to be directly above the station. It's lining up to not be, and it's just fine, especially because we're about to have this helix this way. It's just a little bit more compact. The twist is going the right way. Just getting that clear because I made the mistake last time of somehow putting the twist the wrong way. I'm not sure how quite I did that, but we were about to open up and turn into this helix. So let's do that, and then we can talk about the final. I think there's like 2 or 3 bunny hop hills. Alright, so there's our layout done. I'm going to test it out really quick and make any appropriate changes. So I'm probably going to have to lower this cobra roll just a bit, but these airtime hills and everything, it feels like the gradual decrease in height is pretty reasonable. This may have to lower as well, this little airtime hill in the back. But yeah, I'm going to make all those changes. I'm going to, of course, touch it up in color as well to give it that really, really pretty attractive coloring that made us pick it in the first place. So I'm going to cut over that, and I'll see you then. Alright, there is Time Twister done. It took a little bit more massaging of the track, especially the hardest part about this coaster was surprisingly this turn here. It was just so snappy. It's pretty solid. You can see that clearance looks good, but the speed in which it's taking these elements is not bad, to be honest, and the clearances look good for how compact and unrealistic that Roller Coaster Tycoon is. Typically the stuff that doesn't translate very well, but big fan of this. This is at 0.3 friction multiplier, which is of course the lowest that it can go, but it actually completes the layout, I think at like 0.8 or 0.9, so it doesn't really take that much, but it lacks like the snappiness. So to make it as close to, you know, the original as possible, I lowered the friction. But otherwise, this is maybe one of the best translations, definitely the best small one. I mean, Liberty Loop barely worked at all. This one works surprisingly well, and the coloring, of course, looks awesome. Which, speaking of, one of the trains, as you can see here, one of the trains is blue. You can't make one train one color, then the other one a different color, unfortunately, in the game. This can absolutely translate to the game, and just like before, I'm going to put these on the workshop so you can download them, of course, on my workshop. Horstata is the name. Some of the comments mentioned that they wanted POVs after each build, so I will do that in this episode. So let's jump over to that POV, and then we will jump over to the next build. But I hope we did the Twister coaster some justice on this one. So with Time Twister done, we are going to jump into the Corkscrew coaster. And funny enough, we're going to go with the pre-build Corkscrew, as it's known in Roller Coaster Tycoon 1 and 2. In 3, it's known as the triple Corkscrew. However, this is, for me as a kid, was one of like the most basic coasters out there. It was very reliable, it has good stats, and I just really wanted to get the Corkscrew coaster in this episode because it's such an iconic coaster model. But yeah, this should be a pretty easy one to make and kind of gives us the chance to do something a little bit different. So, and you get to listen to that awesome Corkscrew coaster chain lift. It's so awesome. Of course, the Corkscrew model is the dark kinetics. Let's just build it right here, I'd say. In game, we're looking at 55 feet, so actually 10 feet shorter than the last one. But because this model has a lot less demanding elements, I have no concerns really with the height. 20-foot Corkscrew could prove to be a little difficult, but I'm not overall too concerned. 55 feet is what we're looking at with a little turn to the right. I will probably cut over to right before we do the drop and we can talk about everything after. Alright, so I built the lift, pretty simple stuff. We are at an angle of 17 degrees, which is a very shallow lift hill. That's what Time Twister was at, and that was very proportional, so I'm going to stick with that. As we see in game, we are dropping down to 5 feet and then jumping up to a 30-foot airtime hill, as you can see right there. And then we should be ending just before the station, where we then go 30 feet up once again for a turnaround. So our goal is to make a bunny hop hill of 30 feet and then enter the second turnaround just above the station at 30 feet. So let's keep it proportional, and that should do. So I'm going to do that real quick. Alright, so there's our little 30-foot airtime hill. It's profiled a little strange, but it may need some tweaking towards the end. But it is a 50-foot to a 5-foot, 6-foot-ish, 30-foot drops down into 30 feet. We are dropping back down into a little airtime hill into the first corkscrew and then into the second corkscrew. Our goal is to get that second corkscrew just above the drop there. So let's do a little time lapse of that, and we'll probably meet just before this big turnaround for the finale. Alright, so there is our double corkscrew done. This is proving to be actually much more difficult than I thought it would. I thought that the elements being relatively simple, being the corkscrews, and obviously less demanding, would have made it much easier, but no, it's not. It is not. We are lined up pretty much perfectly as we should be on this little corner here, so that looks pretty good, but I'm kind of concerned about how the profiling is and how it's going to look on the POV. This airtime hill is pretty sad, because we don't really have like any space to do that. Like, if I raise it up any more, it's gonna look horrible and really rough. So yeah, I redid this turnaround to back it up more so that we could make room for this airtime hill, and it's still pretty rough. So yeah, I think we're just gonna have to live with that. We may even, hopefully not, we may have to get rid of it, but what we're concerned about right now is this big turnaround element. So we sweep up to the right and then we turn, then we go down through this first corkscrew that we did, then we do a second corkscrew over that airtime hill into the helix and wrapping it up. So I'm going to do all of that just now. Then of course we'll paint it, do the supports and any tweaking just like we did with the first one. Do wish me luck. We are going through this one right there, corkscrew helix. You get it. Alright, so there's our layout done. This helix should be fine. Maybe that turn is a little rough, so I could always just make that a little bit wider. This corkscrew is much easier to make than the other ones. The profiling, again, is a little strange. The best one is this second one here. This first one's a little kind of triangular at the top, a little pointed, and this one kind of is too wide. So, also, these corkscrews are only 20 feet tall. These corkscrews are like 30 feet tall. 20-foot corkscrew is not happening. Like, it's not happening. I'm gonna run the train real quick so we can kind of take a quick glimpse of how it's doing. This is with no friction multiplier, so this may change. But I think our actual problem isn't going to be momentum. It's going to be these moments where it's just like snaps your neck. But yeah, so I just want to make sure it gets through the layout, make sure it looks pretty good, and then I'll probably... Okay, that airtime is pretty triangular. Coming down here, it's a little slow there. That horrible airtime hill into the first corkscrew, which it's okay. That is terrible. Actually, I don't think it's going to make this. Okay, it's not. Wow, okay. This moment here definitely needs some editing. Wow, that is rough. It's not the worst, so I'm going to do some touching up. I'm going to actually lower the friction multiplier to maybe like 0.6. Do all the coloring, and yeah, we'll take a look at it afterwards. So there is corkscrew, triple corkscrew, whatever Roller Coaster Tycoon game you're referring to, complete, done and dusted. It's actually not the worst. This one, unlike Time Traveler over there, needs to be at 0.3. This moment here is actually not that bad in the POV. I kind of commemorated that little airtime hill with like this super small, like 1 foot dent. If you do anything more than that in the POV, it just like shakes the camera like aggressively, and it just looks completely horrible. Otherwise, this isn't the worst thing in the world. It's just a very tame ride. It's not that interesting. It looks cool. The triple corkscrew is obviously very aesthetically pleasing, but the actual ride itself is kind of eh. So relative to the question, does it translate well? Yes, let's say yes, it translates. No, it doesn't translate well. It is better than Liberty Loop, so I'm not gonna, you know, bully it too much. But these corkscrews at 30 feet are just barely acceptable. 20 feet even would be almost impossible. So this gets like not an X, not a check mark, but kind of just a meh. Mid! Yeah, the POV is kind of eh. So let's jump over to that POV, and you guys can kind of see what I'm talking about. In the meantime, I will see you afterwards, and I will jump over to the next one. This next one I'm very excited for, so make sure to check out after the POV. So I'll go ahead and put triple corkscrew next to Great White Whale. Go hang out next to them. So far we've got all those done. Let's jump back over to Roller Coaster Tycoon and let's see what the final one for this episode will be. I'm very excited for this one. This was one of my favorites and a very exciting one to recreate. So with corkscrew, triple corkscrew done, let's do the last one, which is the Hyper Twister roller coaster, which I kind of alluded to when we picked out those coasters at the beginning of this video. Out of all of these, the one that I'm picking is Raven Racer, which technically isn't for this specific Hyper Twister model. You can use different ones, but I just chose the juvenile ones. But if you don't know, if you aren't familiar with this model, it is pretty small. But look at that. First of all, if you can't tell already in this little series that we're doing, I love when the track has patterns on it. This is the third coaster we've done in the series where the track looks different, where it's painted. So as a kid, obviously, I love that because colors made little baby brain me go crazy. But along with that, this is our first dueling coaster. So last episode, we finished off with the interlocking loops on Great White Whale. This time, we're going to finish the episode off on a dueling coaster, which actually, hold on. This train goes into this station, but it came out of this station. So this is almost like a Mobius coaster. That changes everything. I don't remember that as a kid. I think I just saw colors as a kid and was like, whoa, and I never really looked twice into it. Yeah, this is actually going to take some experimenting. That just made this coaster a whole lot more interesting. So we're going to use this. Also, I want to note that all three of these coaster models that we've done so far, Time Traveler, now Raven Racers, and Corkscrew, are in Roller Coaster Tycoon 3 as well. Let's see if we can actually have two stations. If we can't, then I'm going to just make it a Mobius loop and just disregard the second station, which will make it very interesting. So let me kind of do some experimenting and I'll kind of get back to you with some results. Okay, so I did a little experiment just now trying to add another station, and you can't. Unless you were to do a loading station, then you can have two separate stations. But you can't have like a full-on loading and unloading station, the two of them on the same ride. But that's okay. That actually kind of saves us the headache of having to like align the stations. We're just going to do a Mobius loop. And if you don't know what a Mobius loop is, it's when the coaster kind of almost goes through the circuit twice. It's a dueling coaster type of thing. Something you might see on like Twisted Colossus, I believe is the name, at Magic Mountain, where that's an example of a Mobius coaster. So those aren't two separate coasters. You go through one side, then you loop around and it kind of waits for the second train. So now that we know that, let's just get to building it. The station is at 20 feet and we are looking at 3-car trains. So we just have to have a big enough station for 3 cars. We have an interesting challenge on top of this of we have to build in very specific size segments of track because we have to paint it to have this pattern. So not only do we have to build the actual coaster, we have to build it in these perfectly sized segments of track to have the coloring look right. And then when we build the second side of the track, we have to mirror it perfectly. All right, so there's our 60-foot chain lift done. Now we're going to drop down to 15 feet. This clearance moment, there's absolutely no way that works, so I may have to kind of call an audible there and jump back up to 40 feet, then do this big turnaround. So I'm going to build this to 40 feet quick, and then we can talk about how we're going to attack this guy. Alright, so I built the turnaround. It's not the coolest looking thing in the world. This clearance here actually might be okay. It's going to be close. We are pretty close to directly under the track. We're leaning a little bit to the left here. The supports are going to be non-existent because we're building underneath the track here. In game, they kind of like, they share the same support that splits it. So I might have to do custom supports, which I hate. But anything to make it work, I guess, right? All right, there's our little airtime hills done. That's close. We are jumping up now to 25 feet for an airtime hill. Hopefully there's enough clearance between this and the chain lift. Then we're sweeping underneath the station, and then this is where the Mobius part starts. So I'm gonna try and do all this. We can talk after that. All right, we're entering the Mobius part. I think that is pretty close. This part might be a little bit higher. And then I'll add a block section, which I think may work. Probably not, to be honest. We're probably going to have to rely on timing, which is the worst. I'm not the best at the block section and the Mobius stuff, so I'm going to have to figure it out, I'm sure, after I build it. You guys are probably screaming through the screen because you know how to do this. I'm going to have to figure it out as we go. But it will line up one way or another. And the good news is this lines up perfectly. So we did something right somewhere, and now we are pretty much mirrored perfectly. So this is awesome. This is going exactly as it's supposed to. I don't like that the catwalk is on the left here because it kind of blocks the dueling part. But yeah, so I'm gonna get to smoothing and trying to line up this Mobius coaster, and obviously the paint job and the custom supports and all that fun stuff, and then I will check back with you when it's all done, and we can make sure that the smoothing looks good and all that fun stuff as well. And that should be done and dusted. This has been by far the hardest one, and it should be pretty rewarding though. This will look really neat if it's done correctly. We are back. This took a little bit of TLC to get done. You can see the custom supports kind of done here fairly nicely. They're super basic, definitely not structurally sound. These supports are actually the ones that are built into the Giovanni model that we are using, and they perfectly line up the track underneath. And obviously the paint job looks super cool. It looks just like the Roller Coaster Tycoon equivalent. Now, of course, it's a Mobius loop. This is at a friction level of 0.3. But yeah, I think this is aesthetically the best one we've probably done so far. I mean, you could argue definitely with Time Twister, but I just love this coloring. So you may notice that their trains are not next to each other. I tried messing around with some block sections to make them line up. The best I was able to do is basically this, where the first train goes by itself and goes throughout the layout, and then pretty much I had the time interval, whatever it's called, minimum interval to 26, which is like perfect. If this was a launch coaster, then we can talk block sections, but I think because this is a chain lift, this is the best we can do, which still is fine. Not bad, and it's pretty smooth, especially once I got rid of that double airtime hill. It's pretty smooth. I'm pretty happy with this. Yeah, so technically it clears, but if any of these people put their hands up, it's see ya. Their hands are gone forever. PR team's gonna love that. But yeah, it races through this at a pretty good speed. I will say yes, this does totally check off as something that translates. So this was a super fun one. I'm glad we got to fit it into this video. Of course, all three of these, Time Twister, Raven Racers, and Corkscrew, will all be on my workshop as blueprints, so you can download them for yourself. And yeah, I'm super happy with these three. I would say 2 out of 3 were definite yeses. I would say this was a very successful episode. Of course, if you want to see more, do let me know, and otherwise, do take care. I will see you in the next video.